It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. So I have an amazing and interesting guest today. Lauralea Tanner is a chief growth officer. She works at Aclara, and she leads sales and growth across this organization and is responsible for promoting and selling revenue cycles solutions to healthcare partners. She's passionate about creating better patient experience and driving financial outcomes for providers. Most important, as I've gotten to know Lauralea, she's fascinating, interesting, warm, and damn approachable. Like we talk about everything. Lauralea, welcome to Her Success Story today, and thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ivy. I love having these conversations, especially around, with women and talking about what we can do to really promote ourselves in the workplace. So love it. Thanks for having me.
So how did you get into healthcare? Was this a background? Was this a passion? Because you have an interesting backstory here that when I first heard it, when we talked, I was like, really?
Yeah, it was kind of a mistake. Not a mistake.
Good mistake.
It was just by chance that I ended up in healthcare. So I certainly did not go to college to get a degree in healthcare or revenue cycle. I actually, my degree is in international studies and business. I took 3 years of Russian. I was planning to go to work for the CIA or the FBI or jump out of airplanes, do something. And after I graduated, I ended up in New Orleans. I ended up married my senior year. My now ex-husband was an attorney. So I moved to New Orleans, and I was there probably 3 months and thought, gosh, this is a great place to visit, but I really don't want to live here. and fortunately, or, unfortunately, my ex-husband felt the same. And I said to him one day, we should both look for jobs, and whoever finds a job first, the other one should follow suit. So if that means moving from New Orleans, and that's how I ended up in healthcare. I applied for a job, and it happened to be back in Memphis where I went to college, and it was in healthcare. So I started.
There was an opportunity to take you to a place that you liked and was familiar with.
Yes. And yeah, absolutely. But it was totally different. It was healthcare. I mean, I didn't know anything about healthcare other than going to the doctor. So that's how I started. And that was 1994. My first couple of jobs in healthcare were more on the clinical side.
Explain what that means.
So clinical would be, I was implementing systems that were used by nursing and used by pharmacy.
Got it.
Working with doctors, a lot of nurses. And I realized that if I wanted to get ahead, if I wanted to make more money, the only way to do that was to truly become a clinician. Well, I wasn't going to go to medical school. I could go to nursing school. I even thought about becoming a cardiac perfusionist, which that person, is in the OR when they're doing, cardiothoracic surgery. And I thought, I just don't know that that's the answer. And it just so happened that I was approached by a company that was in revenue cycle. And that's how I ended up here. I was very intrigued by all of these systems that I was implementing cost just a ton of money. And who was this chief financial officer at the hospital that was making the decision and signing the contract? So I was like, yeah, I mean, this is interesting. I don't want to implement systems. I want to understand the whole financial livelihood of a hospital and health system. So that's
So
when
take
I
a
got into
moment
it.
here because I know from not very thrilled to say this is our 6th year with her success story. And we've never done much in healthcare, okay, as far as interviews. And as far as when healthcare crosses business. So I want you, just in case we have some listeners who don't get it, can you explain a little bit of what revenue cycles mean? Because you, in essence, are a true businesswoman.
Yes. So when I explain to people what I do in my business, I say I'm on the business side of healthcare. I'm not a clinician. I don't provide healthcare services. What revenue cycle is it's everything from getting a patient registered to go into the hospital. It is after the point of care, it is coding that and saying, okay, this is what the doctor did. This is putting it on the claim, making sure the diagnoses are correct, et cetera, and then getting that bill to the insurance company and even following up with the patient for their patient portion. So it's the whole billing process, but it starts with getting that patient registered to come in for their services.
Got it. So you maneuvered from a variety of different perspectives in healthcare. All of a sudden, our international business student is now a healthcare. How much can I learn and how can I learn it? So share a little bit. You took on one thing about you that I truly respect and admire, and I have to say this complete candor, is your willingness to say, this is interesting, I'll go in and figure it out. This is interesting, I'll go in and figure it out. And at the end of the day, you have scaled a career without limiting yourself to, I have to stay in this lane.
Absolutely.
And you have my admiration and respect. And I think there's so much to learn from that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It has not always been easy. I'm one of these people, I like to go in and fix things. And when I've mastered something, I get bored. And so I decided pretty early on, I wanted to learn all aspects of revenue cycle. So the registration, the coding, the billing piece of it. I've even done some Medicare cost reporting. So I've done a lot of different things. And then even the different functions and with different companies, because I just wanted to learn everything that I could. And, people said to me over the years, well, you jump around a lot. Well, yeah, I mean, that was kind of purposeful because I wanted to learn so many things. And some of those people that have accused me of jumping around in my career, they're kind of pigeonholed in this one area, whereas I have surpassed them in my career.
And I truly think as a career, you have the ability when you're leaning into what you want to learn and what interests you. Okay. As opposed to, pushing it away and saying, no, I need to stay niched here. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to create a story that has much more value in the long run.
Absolutely. My son and I had this conversation just this week. There are kids, and I was an athlete growing up. I played basketball, I played softball, pretty much anything with a ball that I touched, I was good at. There are athletes and there are people that are just good at one thing. And I think being an athlete kind of transcends and can go into business, right? I am an athlete in the business of healthcare. I can be an operations person. I can be a sales leader. I can be a client relationship management. And I've done all of those things. It's been a little challenging for companies that I've talked to in the course of my career because they don't know where to plug me in. And my answer is plug me in anywhere. Put me in, coach. I can do it. I was very, very blessed. Probably 4 years ago, a CEO that I know I admire, he's one of my mentors, reached out to me and he said, "Hey, listen, I want you to do something for me. Can you come work for me as a consultant? I want you to do business transformation." Transformation, what's that? And he said, "Look, we've acquired 10 different companies. We have 6 different service lines. Some of those companies do the same thing, but they do it differently and they're on different systems. And I need somebody to come in here and process map what we're doing today and create future state." And I said, "I'm not a Six Sigma Master Black Belt." He goes, "I know you're not, but you know the business." And so being able to take that leap of faith, take that risk, and do something I had never done before, never thought I would do it, but I loved it. And we were so successful. But it was taking that chance and saying, yeah, I mean, I should believe in myself as much as, Roger believed in me. So.
And from that experience, how has it led you to where you are today?
I think it continued to challenge me. This was only 5 years ago. I mean, I was, like I'm early 50s. So it was, my mid to late 40s. And by that point, you kind of think you know it all. I've done everything. So I think continuing that one event continued to push me and continue to tell me, doesn't matter how old you are, you have to continue to push yourself, continue to grow. I don't even see retirement. I don't know when retirement's going to be, but it is not going to be 65. It may not be 75.
I cannot agree with you more. Here, first of all, I'm going to weigh in a couple of things here. I truly believe when I stop learning and growing is the day that I lay down and am done for life. Absolutely. Until that day, I am leaning into learning and growing. I'm interested. I have a laundry list of things I want to learn, from hobbies to business to curiosity to exploration. And, people have asked me, I'm a few years older than you. And they're like, "So like, what's your plans?" I have friends slowing down, a friend of mine's a teacher, retired. This one's doing that. That one's doing that. And I'm like, I happen to love what I do every day. If I'm enjoying it and loving it, why would I stop?
Absolutely.
I might add in some other fun things, but that is enhancing a life of further riches.
Yeah, I had an opportunity, 3 or 4 years ago I had left a company and I was trying to figure out what's my next thing, what's my next adventure going to be. And I had been out a month and I had organized the pantry, organized every closet, everything. And a friend of mine called me and said, "I didn't know you left that company." I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "Are you bored yet?" I said, "Absolutely." I've done everything. And that's how I stumbled into what is now Clara and what I'm doing today. I just don't think that I will ever be the person, maybe when I have grandchildren, it'll be different, but I cannot imagine slowing down. I'm always moving, always doing something.
I agree with you. I always have a lot of things going on in my life on a very positive matter. If I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And we actually have our first grandchild on the way, which is incredibly exciting. And, my daughter looked at me and we had a very heart to heart. I said, "I am not going to be your nanny." She goes, "I know you run a business, Mom." And I said, "I'm going to be the grandmother that my mom modeled, who is still working, and would call me up, and say, 'Hey, do you guys want to go out to dinner after work? Because happy to come up and take the little ones for dinner. Do this, put them to bed, go and have a nice night.'" All the weekends, if there's, a problem, I will be happy to support and step in, because I understand what it is to be a young mom as I think, we've both been there. Yet I want to embrace being grandma and not a caretaker. That's where my value to the next generation.
Well, and I think your value to the next generation is also teaching your grandchild that independence and how to kind of some of the things you've learned in your career. Not that grandma is the caregiver, not that grandma is, baking cookies all the time. I love to have time to bake cookies. I don't always have time to bake cookies. I mean, it's yeah.
It's interesting. I remember when my daughter was in her teens, like your son is in his teens now. And she said to me, she was getting ready for college, and we were talking about careers. And she said, Mom, she saw some of her friends, parents who were working moms and some who were not. And she said, well, once we're out of the house, what do they do? Who are they? So who are they as a woman? And we had this beyond, 16, 17-year-old conversation that I did not see coming at me in that moment. Of who we are as women, in addition to being a spouse, a partner, a mother, a daughter, everything else. But who are we as women, as leaders in and of ourselves?
Right. That's interesting that you guys would have that conversation. I don't know about you. Sometimes I have trouble relating to some of, or my son's friends' parents, mothers in particular, have trouble relating to me. They don't understand what I do. And that's been challenging as well. Oh, you travel all the time. How do you do that? I'm very blessed to have a husband who's very supportive. And I think you and I both grew up in an era where it was expected that the man was going to be the breadwinner. Like I said, I'm very blessed. I am the breadwinner in our house. My husband does work. He does make a really nice salary, does very well for himself. But throughout the course of our marriage, 18 years, I've been the breadwinner. That is unusual for a lot of people out there, and especially a lot of my son's parents. So maneuvering that and is challenging sometimes.
I definitely get that. I remember back in the day, even before I started Slater Success. So I'm going back. Slater Success has been around over 15 years. Before this, for those new listeners, I owned a printing company. I was in the industry over 20 years. And one of my colleagues looked at me, one of the guys, he goes, you make a man's salary, Ivy. I said, I didn't know that salaries came with genders. I thought it came with accomplishments.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I will never forget that moment.
Oh my goodness.
So looking back on some other things, what has surprised you in your career? I think that, here we are 2023, and seeing that we as women are still struggling to have our voice heard. I think that's kind of surprising to me. I mean, we talk about equality. I even hear men saying, oh yes, we're women are equal to us. But when it really comes down to it, I think we're still struggling with that. In my business in particular, in the lower levels, predominantly women in the staff level. But as you go up through the ranks, there are fewer and fewer women that are in leadership positions. And it's very surprising to me that at this day and age, we're still faced with that. I still struggle sometimes with having my voice heard
And, my son will tell me sometimes when I'm talking to him, he's like, Mom, don't talk to me in your work voice. Because I definitely have a work voice versus a home voice. But that comes from years of feeling like people weren't listening. That's been a real surprise to me.
And I always wonder if the majority of the lower level are women, how do the men move up? And what happens to the women? Where'd everybody go? And where did you come from?
Right. My grandmother used to tell me, and I don't know if this is a Southern saying or if it's more widely known. My grandmother would say, don't be so mealy mouthed. Don't be timid.
Okay, Southern saying translation for the Northerner here.
Yeah. Don't be timid. Don't be bashful. Tell me what you want. Don't beat around the bush. And my grandmother was not a businesswoman. She was just a very strong woman. And I, early in my career, I would use terms like I feel, I believe, I think, and I've had to eliminate those phrases from my vocabulary because it makes us sound, as women, makes us sound timid. And I think that as the opportunities are presented, women need to be very strong and very pointed in what they want in their career. This is what I want. I have done the work. I deserve to be in this next role. I deserve to go up. And I would just love for more women to feel confident in themselves. Take risk, be confident, ask for what you want.
You shared a story with me once about going big and bold on a salary negotiation.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking? Do you remember that?
I do. Of course I do.
You open to share because I think that is what big and bold is about. It's about, and I know in the consulting and coaching I do in large companies, they're like, and I will take them through, exactly what an investment looks like and why and the results, et cetera, et cetera. And I've had CEOs and say, Ivy, you're looking at, I said, yes. And then I just stop.
That's right.
I just stop. So share your story.
So first of all, let me just say, I think it should be as illegal to ask someone what they make when they're interviewing for a new job. I think it should be as illegal to ask that person, what do you make today, in consideration of what the company wants to pay them going forward, as it is to ask, what is their religion or sexual preference. I mean, I think it doesn't matter. What I make today does not matter. It's like, what is the job that you want to hire me for, and how much is that job worth to you? And so late 90s, I was leaving that clinical realm and going into revenue cycle. And I was literally making $27,500 a year. And I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, working my tail off. And that's when I realized, I was telling the story of, if I'm going to move up, got to be in a clinical role. So I interviewed for this job in revenue cycle. And luckily they didn't ask me, what do you make today? They said, what is it going to take to get you? And after I understood the role and I explained, okay, this is what you're asking me to do. I would like $75,000 a year, please. And they paid it. I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, I just got almost a $50,000 raise. But it was great.
You almost tripled your salary because you looked at the situation objectively of what the job was, what the worth and value of that position is to the company.
Absolutely.
And the difference you could make. And if you don't show up and do that job well, you're not going to retain that 75,000. So it's not about reaching pie in the sky and I can do a mediocre job. It's truly showing up and doing your best of your best.
That's right. Doing the work, showing them that I was worth that $75,000 that they were paying me. I was, not many people know this. I was in that job for about 3 months, and it was a train wreck. I walked into a very bad situation, and management was not great. And I decided to leave and go back to the clinical realm. And I told them, I mean, I could have just quit and said, this isn't for me, but that's not who I am. I was very transparent. And I said, you have some real problems here, and these are the problems. Therefore, I am going to leave and go back to where I came from. 6 months later, they called me and they said, would you come back? And I said, did you not listen to what I said when I left 6 months ago? And they said, oh, we did. And we made those changes. And now we want you to come back and run the region. So I came back and took my boss's job and got another raise.
Nice.
So, yeah, you have to just believe in yourself. I mean, the worst thing they could say is no, but just lay it out. This is the job you're asking me for. This is what you want me to do. This is my value and worth. There you go.
Well, I would normally ask you at this point, what piece of advice do you have for our listeners? What's one secret or tip you would have? But I think we got that.
I definitely take risks. Don't be shy, but you have to lay it out. You have to understand, do your homework. No, this is the value that I bring to this organization. This is what this organization is asking me to do. Take those chances.
Yeah. I always say, when I was teaching, I know your son took his driver's test today. I remember teaching my son to drive, and we were on a college tour, and being the city folks, it was a great opportunity for him to get really good highway driving in. So we were driving around New York State. We hit, I don't know, Vermont, Massachusetts, a bunch of places. And I took a business call as he was driving, and it was basically a deserted highway. It was fine. I could split my attention in that moment. And I took this call, and he kind of heard my end of it. And then afterwards I said, you're really doing well on the highway, this, that, and the other thing. I said, I have any questions, thinking like, does he have any questions about like highway driving? And he goes, Mom, just listening to your call, basically you summed it up with either go big or go home. That's the bottom line of what I heard you say. It just took that call about 30 minutes to get there. And I was like, wow, out of the mouths of babes.
Absolutely. It's funny. I just, the number of things that my son picks up on, just hearing me, it sometimes he'll say, Mom, I think you handled that well. I mean, wow. Or he'll say, Mom, you scared me. So.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here today on Her Success Story, Lauralea. It is, every time we chat, I can go on and on and on and not pay attention to the time. I admit that.
Me too. This has been a lot of fun having the conversation. Appreciate the time.
And listeners, this is the time of the show that I say the same thing every time. So I'm going to be redundant one more time. Take a breath and take a note. Out of listening to our conversation today, what is the one key takeaway that you took from it? Why is that important to you? Write it down and create an action and intention around it, and give yourself the gift of following through. I love listening to podcasts. I love listening to other people's podcasts. I appreciate all the listeners that we have at Her Success Story. I also am a businesswoman. I appreciate learning and then learning from that and taking an action. Love to hear what you've learned and the actions you're taking. Feel free to leave a note in the show notes. Reach out to me via LinkedIn. Lauralea, how can they reach out to you?
LinkedIn, the same way. They can always get in touch with me that way.
Awesome. And feel free to check out SlaterSuccessCoaching.com or SlaterSuccess.com. See you next time.
Got my